when it comes to all the shmups I've covered over the years, the one thing I found is that I've really fallen in love with the multi-directional scrolling shooter, where rather than just flying through a linear stage, you have a vast level to battle in, where rather than defeat a set pattern of waves, you're tasked with taking out multiple targets in order to complete the stage. This particular variation originates with Namco's 1981 game Bosconian. Here, you pilot a small starfighter, and you're tasked with clearing each sector from the Bosconians and their space stations. Each station can be taken down in one of two ways: by taking out the 6 exterior pods, or by a lucky shot directly into the core. As you reach further levels, the cores will start to be shielded. Later still, they'll start to fire the occasional missile at you. They may only travel in a straight line. That can really hurt when lining up that lucky shot. You'll also tangle with enemy fighters. Most of the time, they'll be wandering around the playfield solo, but on other occasions, you'll be attacked by a formation of them. Taking out the lead causes them to scatter, and if you can take them all out before they flee the screen, you get bonus points. The most dangerous threat though? That's the spy ship. If this one tracks you down, the enemy will be placed on red alert, resulting in constant attacks by enemy fighters, at least until you lose a life, or you take out the last station to complete the level. The current alert status is indicated by both vocal alerts, along with the raising of the alert status as shown on your side panel. The tight controls, frantic action, and tense atmosphere, bolstered by the in-go speech, all make for a frantic arcade experience, and one that sadly wasn't popular in the arcades, making locating a machine to play it on a difficult proposition at best. Thankfully, that is where the home conversions come into play, and the first one I'm going to show you is the MSX version published by Namco themselves in 1984. You would expect a first-party conversion to be special, and well, let's see how it goes. The first thing you may notice is the lack of smooth scrolling, something the original MSX could not do in hardware. Honestly, I don't find that much of a problem. You're moving about at a fair clip, so you don't really have time to sit and nose the scenery, like you would in other shooters. The other thing you may notice is the single colour sprites, but again, I don't really mind these either. They contrast against the background very nicely, and they all use colours from the MSX palette, which more than approximates the arcade's art style. The instrumentation panel is presented in full, and the radar is just as useful as you'd find in the arcade original. One thing that surprised me though, was the inclusion of the opening blast-off sound. Though sadly, the more important bits of speech aren't included, meaning that glancing at the instrumentation is just that bit more important than it was with the original machine. Plus, the controls are pretty much as tight as you'd expect. I always felt like I was in control, and I was never fighting the game in moving about. I did find it slightly tougher than the arcade version, and I'm not sure if that's just because the play area is smaller, or if it's PAL slowdown at work. All up, this is an incredibly solid conversion, but as I said, I think that's to be expected when it's by the folks who created the original arcade game. Next up, we have Mastertronic's conversion. Yep, that Mastertronic. They licensed a number of Namco titles for conversion in 1987, which consisted of Gaplus, Motos, and this. The first two were fairly straightforward conversions, but Bosconian had quite a bit more added to it, and in the process got renamed to Bosconian 87. These versions were handled by Binary Design, the studio who was handling a fair chunk of Mastertronic's output around this period, and we'll start with the Spectrum version to see just how they tackled it. On booting up the Spectrum version, you can see the first disadvantage, the smaller playing area. Both the Spectrum and the MSX share the same screen resolution, and obviously the Spectrum is going to brute force how it draws the screen, so it's not an issue at first glance, but once you get into the game, that's when you see how much it hurts. Your fighter, the enemy craft, and the hazards all take up a fair bit of space, meaning that compared with the MSX version, your visibility is really restricted, which I find greatly hampers your combat effectiveness. So, you grab the joystick or the keyboard, and you start playing. The next thing you notice? Yep, you can only shoot forwards. Unlike the original game, you have to earn that rear firing weapon. And to do that, collect the power-up that looks a bit like a Delta Wing fighter. And there you go, rear firing cannons. Because you're now weaker, You've also been given smart bombs. Those can be triggered for a quick tap of the enter key, and they're quite handy to clear out a screen full of nasties. But that one big element, which really takes the fun out of it, the fuel gauge. Now in the original game, there's no real time restriction, at least until you get to red alert. You've got free range to tackle the level however you want to, whether that's focusing on fighters or base blasting. Here though, your fuel slowly ticks down. It can be replenished by collecting pickups in the level, but this requires you to locate them by sight, and it doesn't help when you're frantically flying about to your doom. On their own, these mightn't sound like much, but they do add up. As rather than being able to plan which station you want to strike next, and to be prepared for approaching formations, here, you're going to be flying about, trying not to crash into something, hoping you can find those fuel pickups, and wondering just how the heck you activate that rear gun. Audio-wise, something I found surprising was that even on a 128K Spectrum, none of the speech is brought over. I don't know about you, but I would have really appreciated hearing that in-game, just as a means to help keep me informed as to what is happening. The background ambience of the arcade machine is now replaced by an in-game tune, which is kind of jolly and, for me, is not really what I'd expect to hear during a deep space battle. All up, despite the frustrations, it is actually a playable game, and I can admit, as I was recording footage of it, I didn't mind playing it. I could even say it was fun to an extent. Finally, we're going to look at the Commodore 64 version, and I'm just going to be honest up front. Fun is not a term that can apply to this version. I mean, for me at least, when I see binary design and Commodore 64 together, I mentally prepare myself for the worst. When we've seen games developed by them featuring game-breaking bugs, or repeatedly selecting coders who have no interest in converting the game properly, you can see why their C64 catalogue is not all that impressive. But here's the thing, Bosconian 87 hits new lows. I mean, let's face it, this is a heck of an unplayable mess. And this time, it's not because it's littered with game-breaking bugs. The very first element of this is the size of the play area. Rather than try and mimic the arcade game's layout, which was something they attempted with the Spectrum version, the coders this time have chosen to go for a horizontal split between the score panel on top and the play area below. Now, the way that this is done gives you maybe just over half of the C64 screen area to play in, and because it features a horizontal layout, you're seriously shortchanged when it comes to being prepared from threats that come from above or below you. Now, that's something that you could possibly work around. But any chance of that is all lost when you see how ridiculously fast it plays. Now, the 64 is a machine which, to me at least, is more than capable of handling Bosconian. But for the average player, this fast pace results in them losing their lives within seconds. I swear, I've honestly survived longer in a game of Defender than I have when trying to play Bosconian 87. That isn't the end of it. There's still plenty more of horrible design decisions, and the greatest one is the radar. With the Spectrum conversion, it actually does the job, and generally I think it's actually quite a solid piece of UI for being able to look at the situation at a quick glance. That doesn't apply here, in any sense of the word. To start with, your position is indicated with a yellow blip on a light grey background. Now, let's face it, that is poor colour contrast. I don't even want to imagine what it's going to look like on a low quality TV using an RF signal. And that's just the start, because there's an even bigger problem. The starbases are not even displayed. And that begs the question, why have a radar then? Why not redesign the status area to take up less space? Then you could increase the height of the gameplay area. Right now, that's actually going to be far more useful than having that radar on screen, because it doesn't do the job. And here's the thing, if this was a straight conversion of Bosconian, that would sink it. But because this is Bosconian 87, all the elements I talked about from the Spectrum version are here too, which includes elements like the need to continually top up your fuel supply, as well as trying to find those power-ups to enable the rear cannon. And again, none of these feature on the radar either. You guessed it, you are going to be flying blind the vast majority of the time when you play this game. I really have to be honest with you, I absolutely hate tearing into a game like this. I really, really do. But for me, Bosconian 87 really is the example of what should have been a great solid budget conversion, but it's turned into a horrible, unplayable mess. Do you remember when I talked about the conversions of Motos and Gaplus earlier? Gaplus on the C64 was originally going to be done by Binary Design as well, but they ran into problems and had to shovel it to another team, and I'm glad they did, because Gaplus on the 64 is pretty solid. I did a video on it quite a while ago. So, I guess that's going to leave you the question. If you want to play Bosconian style action on the C64, go and find a game called Kobo 64. It's a different take on it, but it feels so much better than Bosconian 87 is ever going to. Now, in Spectrum land, I actually don't mind Bosconian 87. I think it's playable enough. It's not great, and I'm sure there's other shooters on the Spectrum that are better, but if you could get it for a cheap price, it's not the end of the world. You can have some fun with it. It's actually playable. Compared to the version on the Commodore 64, it is literally a breath of fresh air. It's playable, it runs at a good speed, and despite the questionable design decisions, it's a good approximation of the game. But let's face it, if you're after the best Bosconian experience on an 8-bit computer, then you really want to sit down with it on the MSX. There may be hardware limitations with the single colour sprites and the lack of smooth scrolling, but neither of these I found really impacted the experience that much. The cred which comes from being an official conversion from the folks who created the original game helps it feel far superior than any third-party attempt is ever going to be, at least when you remember how games were converted back in the 1980s. True, hunting it down is going to require a brave trip into the wild frontiers of Japanese auction sites, because like with many of the finest MSX games, it was only released there on cartridge, but I think if you do, I think you'll really enjoy it. And with that, I think it's time to say goodbye to Shmuptember for 2016. Thank you to everyone who's watched the series. I hope you've enjoyed these episodes. Thanks to all my subscribers as always, and I look forward to bringing you some other games soon. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you next time.